so I can tell you what happened then. So in March of 2008, I was living in a shared house in the north part of the San Fernando Valley, which is in Los Angeles. And I started. I mean, I've never had voices in my head. I never had that. I never had that before. I just sort of had an understanding. But that night in March of 2008, right around, just after when Heath Ledger died, and Heath Ledger, he played the Joker in Batman.
Oh.
He died on January the 22nd, which is interesting because the number 22 is in sync with the Joker card and the Fool card in the tarot card deck. And so there was, there's all the...
And being a Joker and all that.
Absolutely, yes.
So you're suggesting that basically the Batman movies has got some kind of ritual magic involved?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And
why was he murdered? What did he?
He was murdered. Well, his real father wasn't the father that that is shown to the public. His real father was a very famous actor, and I've forgotten his name now. He did a lot of theatre in the 50s and 60s. I forget his name. When I remember it, I'll let you know.
Why is it necessary to have a different father than your real one?
Well, they often will take...
In the public domain?
They'll often take, because they don't want any association, and they like to try experiments, and a lot of it is lab rat stuff to test out. But
I mean, there's also, you get lumbered with being so-and-so's father, and nobody watches you because of that.
Right.
Oh, I think you just we'll make sure your plug's in.
Anyways, so in March of 2008, some strange things started happening to me. I had some extremely vivid dreams, and then I got taken out of my body and shown that my life, as I thought it was not. The memories that I had, my childhood memories, were not what I quite thought they were. And for about a 2 weeks period of time, I was shown memory after memory after memory of what was really going on. And I remember being taken to underground facilities at different points, some of them in Sussex, some of them in Kent, and some of them with people who I knew from school, but would have no clue that they were involved at all. And I would sort of come to on a minibus, or a bus where there were 3 of us on one side, 3 of us on the other side, and sort of in a dazed state. And then we'd go somewhere and then black out again. And this sort of led for me to, I was seeing it from in the corner of the room, but we would being given tests, and they would give something.
Who was giving you?
Who was giving? This? Okay, so there was a woman at the front.
How was she dressed? I mean,
she was dressed not uniform, but very well dressed. Dressed up as if she was a banker or a businesswoman.
Well, that was implied that it's in some very salubrious environment where she has to be dressed.
Yes, and there was also...
there was a place that's in public domain.
Yes, but it was underground. So it was below. I'm not talking seriously underground, but it was below wherever.
I mean, you were taken down to the lifts. How do you know you were underground?
Well, I was driven down. There was a slope that we were driven down under, and then it was done there. Me and these 5 other kids that were there, some boys, some girls, but when we were there, we were sort of in a dazed state, so we weren't communicating with each other.
Can you remember any way on how you were collected?
Really, I only remember all of a sudden being in the van. I don't remember being taken. I just remember all of a sudden being in the van, and being sitting in sort of like rows of desks, and then it was very cold, and there was no warmth coming from the people that were there. There was a male who was standing by the door, a female at the front dressed as I was saying, and then somebody would bring round sort of, but it wasn't a Rubik's Cube though, but it was like an unfold. It was like there's something called Rubik's Magic. And it's where you unfold it like this, and then you have to put it in again and fold it to try and make. And they were doing tests to see how fast certain ones were able to do it.
That explains it's one way of testing a form of visual conceptual thinking.
Cognitive, yes, yes. And I felt like, but when they put it down initially, I was like, what am I supposed to do? I have no clue what I'm supposed to do. And then they said, just do it. And then I started touching it, and as soon as I started touching it, I immediately knew how to do it, and I did it very fast. So some of the other kids, and the kids were at the time when this was going on were about 5, 6, 7 years old. So I was looking back at a previous memory rather than something that was happening now.
Is this painful to remember?
It's because it's so because it doesn't fit into the timeline of what I thought my life was. It's sort of very confusing. It doesn't make sense. Who allowed that to happen? Why was that okay? Where were my parents at the time? I remember, and this sort of ties in as well, when I was living in Lewes, which is in Sussex as well, I was very close friends with a little girl. Her name was Meredith Kennedy, and I was very close with her. Both of her parents were scientists, and often they used to take her and I to Sussex University lab. There was a lab there, and I remember getting in the car and being driven there. But then when we'd get driven there, the mother or the father would leave, and then we'd be left in the car. And then some strange things would happen in the car. I kept thinking the car was rolling, and then sort of went dizzy, came to, came back again. But I have flashes of memory going inside of the lab. Now, recently I've looked into it more, and Sussex University is an arm. There is an arm of Tavistock that works right out of Sussex University. And my very close friend at the time, Meredith Kennedy, her mother also worked for Stanford Research Institute. So she used to go back and forth from Stanford to Sussex University. And Stanford then was actually continuing the work that Tavistock had done. Which began by Freud and some other ones there, so that they could completely understand how to split the mind and basically program one personality into the left brain and one personality into the right brain, where each one, it's sort of similar to trauma-based mind control, where you create alters, but this was very specific, so they would play.
So they could do that without the trauma?
This particular one was being done without trauma. There was enough trauma that I was left there without knowing. So it's not working.
The trauma thing is a crude way of doing it.
The trauma, they're not really interested they're interested in trying out all different types of methods. This particular one, which was done by a doctor called Robert Sperry, Sperry. And he was one of the Nazi scientists, and what he wanted to try and do was to see if he could play sounds, words, stories, music to one side of the brain, and then play completely separate one to the other side of the brain. So then it confuses the brain and splits it off. So then you can program one and program the other, which then creates massive confusion as the child gets older, because it's not sure whether it's coming or going, sort of thing. This also induces addiction, because then they created pharmaceuticals that were specifically made for people who'd gone through that trauma. A lot of the opiates that were created in the United States were made specifically because they knew that these kids were going to search that out and find it and become addicts to it.
And this is important because in the Channel 4 program Confessions of an Alien Abductee, they made a big issue of Chantel and the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So the placement of Kentucky Fried Chicken with the special mix in that, it's been described by others as an abduction food.
Really?
Yes. So the use of that could be a double trigger. So
KFC in itself is a basic anagram of fuck, right? If you just switch those around the other way. Well, also, is
the old grandfather image on that a trigger as well?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And the grandfather image on there, if somebody from Asia looks at this man's face, it looks Asian to them. If a white person looks at it, it looks white to them. Right. It's very, very cleverly done like that. And the man who The man who was behind KFC doesn't quite look like that, but he was also a master programmer, handler, slave handler. And when the trauma was done by him, you would be shown a face of this KFC, the actual thing. So you'd flash that face, so you'd keep being drawn to
now,
it.
I have to say that me even mentioning that person's name will trigger her. I'll get a huge amount of abuse immediately for saying that.
Okay.
Because it triggers, and I think that means that relevant people involved at Channel 4 were deliberately triggering. And it should be interesting to note that Marie Kayali, when she was waiting at the station to come down to do the 4 programs she was doing with me in Wiltshire, met the producer of that program. But anyway, that's the side issue.
Really? Okay.
Totally random issues.
Yes.
Improbable probability.
Yes. Now, towards the end of this thing that happened to me in March, I was spending time with two, a male and a female, who were older than me, 20 years older than me. And I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to cause them any trouble, but I do know that they were assets, and that one of I can mention the name of one of them. His name was James Chandler. And he was maybe in his mid to late 50s. He grew up on an Air Force base. He grew up from when he was
That's a familiar name. I've heard something like that somewhere
Now,
before.
Chandler, you take the C off, you have handler. Now, when I was going through this massive trauma in this onslaught of memories that came back in March, he said to me, look, come round, everything's going to be fine, come round here. And I was having I didn't know where I was. I would wake up, go to my car in the morning. I'd look on the ground of my car, and I would see receipts that said that I'd bought something at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was sound asleep in bed at that time. So, no, I found the receipts. So what had been happening
was there any dirt in your clothes or anything at all to indicate that you'd been outside? Physically? I
woke up with clothes on.
Okay.
So I had gone out and I had done something and bought something, and I had absolutely no clue. So anyway, I went round to these people's houses, and I sat down on the ground in the house, and these two people were there, and I said, Max, why don't you have a lay down? Have a lay down. You know, you don't seem very well. You're bright red. Nothing's. You know, you seem like you. So I lay down on the ground, put my head on a cushion. As soon as I put my head on the cushion, I felt like I sunk into the ground. I then became paralyzed. I couldn't move my legs or my arms. I couldn't open my eyes, but I could hear everything that was going on. Within about a couple of minutes after that, I could hear bells ringing, and I could hear these things, sort of incense smelling. And I heard a chain like this being, like there was something here, and it was like incense being spun around like this. I heard the changing of clothes, and I heard ringing, stuff like that. Now I heard them talking about that that they had been waiting to place whatever this ritual was going on. They had been waiting for it, and it had to be done in this house, and they were going to try and attempt to place, I don't know what you'd call it. It was some sort of entity that had been locked down for a very long period of time.
What do you mean by an entity locked down?
Okay. Well, when they started to do I was stripped naked, and when they started to do this ritual, there was some form of sex magic going on in the ritual, and then I felt something, I heard sounds, and I felt something being placed into my body.
Now, before we get there, but when you say what sort of creature, what's a long time, any idea?
Well, I saw it in my mind's eye, and what I saw in my mind's eye was an enormous, sort of a minotaur looking being with two horns, muscular, red, green, and it had been shackled, had been chained by its ankles, chained here like this, and I could smell burning rock. I could smell it very, 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 very strongly, but I couldn't move. Okay, then I saw whatever was going on, then was projected and put in, layered slowly over with the words that were being said. I heard chanting and words that were being said that was layered into, that somehow attached to my chakra energy points, because I was at a weak point. Generally, when you're at your weakest point is when they'll go for it and do it. Then I blacked out, nothing more. The next thing I know, I'm sitting on a couch. I'm sitting back on a couch and I feel extremely powerful. I feel like I want to jump up and run a marathon. I felt so strong. Now the woman came in and she said to me, Max, you haven't been doing too well. Why don't you take a drink of this? I go, what is it? She said, it's electrolytes and it's this and it's that. And it was bubbling and it was in a cup like that. And I had a feeling inside of me that said, do not drink this, because if you drink it, it's going to reinforce whatever has been done and you will be stuck. So I was sitting there with it for about 5 or 10 minutes and she was saying, why haven't you drank it? Why haven't you drank it? And I sipped it and it tasted unusual. She came in again and I spilt it all everywhere on the ground. She panicked like that, went left, went back and made another one and brought it in. And this time I did drink it. And after I drank it, I was sitting there for more. I felt like the feelings I had were like I could get up, I could lift up. I had extreme strength, okay? So I was left there. Then the other guy, whose name is James.
Could you actually lift things up?
Yes. Yes, right. I felt like my strength has increased by 5-10 times.
So you essentially seem to have been programmed with the strength of a minotaur.
And
the minotaur being half human, half bull?
Yes. Then they brought me some food, okay? They said, look, you've got to eat. When I tried to eat a sandwich, they brought me a Subway of all things. When I took a bite of the Subway tasted like burning metal. Every time I took a bite out of it, it tasted like burning metal. So I spat it out and put it on the ground. Now I asked myself in my head what's going on, and then something said to me, you're tasting that because the thing that has been placed inside of you has been biting on these chains for thousands and thousands of years, and now you have taken on that inside of you, so everything is going to taste like that. But not to worry, it's only going to last 3 days and it'll be gone and you'll feel fine again. So this that went on 2 hours later. After that, something happened and my body went rigid, and whatever was inside of me was rejected and left. And then I felt it walked out. I mean, it left me, and
how did it do? It
sort of like, I felt whatever it was couldn't stick, or didn't stick, and sort of moved out like that. At that point, this guy James Chandler brought a picture of my somebody who's related to me over and showed me this picture, and then they said, if it doesn't stick in you, it will certainly stick in him. And don't worry about that, it's failed for you. So then as it's failed, then you need to be taken out. And so then I got this terrible fear that
I'm going to kill you.
Yes. And so this went on, and I went back into the other room and crashed out and fell asleep again. When I fell asleep again, there was 2 officers, what seemed like Nazi officers, standing either side of me. And
what uniforms did they have?
They had the old World War II uniforms, from what I can understand. The stereotypical Nazi World War II uniforms, and they were standing either side of me. And they had told me that what's going on right now is that there have been 100-year war battles for the last 1,000 years. And at the turn of every century, these wars are won or lost. And each time, and that he said that this particular faction had been winning for time after time after time after time. They said they set up all of the Formula One wins, all the World Cup wins were all set up to show how much in power they are.
Yeah.
Okay, and
it's interesting that a lot of horse racing things seem to have magical logos on them.
Yes.
In horse racing.
Yeah, and it's basically a ritual every time. But they showed me the seals over where they'd won. So they were gold seals, one on top of the other, on top of the other. And they said that the final battle is now happening now, and that they were already in a position to win. And they were thanking me. And I said, well, look, I don't know. I haven't done anything. I don't know anything about it. And they said, because you don't remember yet. Then I crashed out of sleep again. And I haven't ever talked about this, Miles. I crashed out of sleep again. Then there was a thing, it looked like a gargoyle, but it was as big as this room and had black wings, like bat wings. Picked me up like this, pulled me back away from the earth like that. So I saw the earth like this, there were rings around the earth, different colored rings around the earth. And this thing pointed out each one of these was thought prisons, were a thought prison. And he said, it doesn't matter which one of the people on this planet get caught up. It doesn't matter which thought prison they get caught up in, whether it's Scientology, whether it's Christianity, whether it's atheism, it doesn't make any difference. As long as you are magnetically drawn to one of them, we have you. And he explained how all the thought prisons were layered around the planet. And he explained how they were made and...
how were they made?
They were made with the will of the creator beings that want to keep this place together.
So that is the will of the Archon, or what? Is her name, or does it make any difference if there's a name?
This particular group, I feel the ones who I was talking to were connected to the Alpha Draconis star system, and I do believe that the Aldebaran group and that the Alpha Draconis group are at war. And I believe that it's been an ongoing war for eons and eons and eons. And the Aldebaran group, which is the bullseye, which in the Taurus constellation, where you see the left red eye, that's why you have this symbol all the time. It's an acknowledgement to the Aldebaran people. It's called a royal star. All of the British royal family are directly connected to the Aldebaran group. When you're talking bad or good or evil, or it's a little difficult at that point, because I think it's perspective of the person. You know what is bad or good when it comes to that. I think they feel what they're doing is good.
Well, since they're not actually human, it's from a human perspective.
Exactly. Yes. So they have been using the sun, which is Helios, which is the real name for the sun. The sun, Helios, is the entrance point to get into this 3D realm here. So they're using that as a vortex in-out point.
Now that's the significance of the 39 steps, but also Saturn. I think you'd mentioned earlier that Saturn was our original sun.
Well, Saturn was the original sun, yes. Yeah. And Saturn, yes. And Saturn got pushed out. It was, in truth, a more efficient sun and a better sun. But then they caught that sun and imprisoned it. The ring around the sun, the ring around Saturn, is an imprisonment. It's imprisoned. Saturn isn't bad. Saturn is another word for where they take Satan from, because it's the controlling force. It's Capricorn.
But is this related to the ring makers of Saturn?
Yes. And Lord of the Rings, and the principle is that. So the ring, one ring to rule them all, would be the ring that is around Saturn.
Which is, of course, was a key thing in 2001 and all.
Yes. So there were no planes that hit the building. They were holograms.
Why do you switch to that?
Because I was just thinking about 2001, and they were just testing Project Bluebeam out as far as they could. There wasn't even a missile. It was.
Well, what was Project Bluebeam? There's an awful lot of stuff about Project Bluebeam.
Project Bluebeam originally, I think they've been trying to do it for a while, because Michael Talbot wrote that fantastic book, The Holographic Universe, and it gives absolute proof that what this particular frequency we're living in is totally holographic, and you can build here through will. If you want to build something, you use your will. If you know what you're doing, you can manifest it that way. That's holographic. Now, what they've been doing for a while is going to Iraq, which is actually Sumer. There is information and ornaments and the spoken word, because when they say the spoken word, it just means a certain frequency, which is the frequency that holds this together. They were attacking to go to the museums to find that out. Yes, absolutely. And there are only a few people who know how to go there and translate actually what is going on. And obviously they call it Babylon or Sumer, and they say that's the beginning, cradle of civilization. It obviously isn't. It's the cradle of what we know as the known timeline we have now.
Which is the whole point of Andrew Power's book, because the Irish people on these islands were the ones who re-civilized after the Great Catastrophe, and met those who emerged from Giza.
Absolutely, I think it's important to bring up the tribe of Dan, because the tribe of Dan is the line that comes all the way through there from Atlantis. The sources from Atlantis coming through Sumer, Egypt, south of France, all the way up, and now Denmark. There's a huge amount in Denmark, but they're all in Ireland. Danny Boy is really about old Dan, you know.
And in order to hold the Irish down, they've generated this conflict situation, which means they're too busy fighting each other rather than finding out what's going on.
Yes.
But there was this great awakening in the late 1970s, so we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah. Just what's happening, and there's always, this is going in 3,600 year cycles, and that's just one, and then there's even an even bigger cycle than that. And right now, we're at a window opening point where you can, if you know what you're doing, get out of this cycle, this soul trapping cycle thing that we've got caught into.
Which is what you referred to in the opening remarks of when we met in Canterbury.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the key was symbolic. Yeah, the key was symbolic. I found out, since my grandmother died, there were a lot of secrets in my family, and I found out a lot of different things that I really needed.
Since our last discussion, we're actually in your grandmother's apartment, is that
right? Yes, we're here now. Yeah, yes. And I came across a few things that really helped me put into perspective what's gone on with me, and the Freemasonic connections and the Templar connections, and Rosalind Chapel, and Roswell, actually, it's actually connected. So
there's a Masonic connection with this alleged crash at Roswell.
Yes.
A ritual. There always is, I suppose.
Yeah. So, I mean, even what I really was looking at for the longest time is the Priory of Sion, and I think that if you can really break down what's going on with the Priory of Sion, you can have a very good idea about. So the Holy Grail is not a literal object. The Spear of Destiny is not a literal object. These are symbolic of the Spear of Destiny is symbolic of a phallus, and the Holy Grail is symbolic of a vagina. So,
what's the point of the symbolism there? Really, why this great symbolism?
Because those beings,
what's the big deal?
Those beings communicate in that way. They don't communicate in the linear way. Everything that they do is done through their language is symbol. They speak through symbols. Even as hieroglyphs, they're symbols. That's how they communicate. It's a much more efficient way of getting across information than using the Western alphabet, which is crap.
Well, we'll leave it at that for the second, and we'll get into the second half.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.